I can have I can have access to the recording.
Yeah, so I'll send you the link to the recording whenever we're done.
Okay.
Then you can
And
put it up. It's going to be like the video
yeah,
though. And then if you want to do just the audio, then I think you would have to re-record it somehow.
yeah, I'll do that, but I won't do it until I get back to Abu Dhabi.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So, yeah, so as long as it's available for a week, then
It'll be available until essentially, I'm assuming until I graduate. So that won't be for another year or so.
2 years or 3, PhD, right?
Hopefully 2017, because my advisor kind of told me the other day, she was like, oh, well, I'm not going to be here forever, so I have to finish eventually.
Happens. Yeah, okay.
He sure does. Okay, so if you're ready, Vance, I would like to start.
Are you full-time? Okay, well, I was just wondering if you were full-time.
Oh, I am full-time, yeah. Okay. So hopefully I'll finish in May 2017. That's the goal, is to graduate May 2017.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Great goal.
So thank you for joining me today, Vance, on your holiday in Maldives. So I just wanted to get through some of the demographics first. So, and just to clarify, you've been teaching for over 21 years, is that correct?
I started teaching in 1976, so you can do math on that, but I took a 2-year break when I worked for a software company.
Okay.
So actually that's quite a lot of time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then right now you're teaching in higher education and
yes.
Training of ESL teachers via communities of practice?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you talk a little bit more about the teaching of the ESL part?
Teaching EFL actually at the moment. English is a foreign language, very much that. And yeah, it's I teach at the Khalifa bin Zayed Air College in Al Ain. It's kind of like the UAE Air Force Academy. And so the students come at all levels, believe it or not. You'd think that, well, people, if they want to be pilots, of course, they have to be able to speak English very well.
Right.
And yeah, but a lot of the cadets have very rudimentary skills, and I suppose they're probably going to go into a support officer, a support stream, where they'll be handling planes and talking in Arabic mostly. So therefore, the English, the cadets are not particularly well motivated to learn English. The ones who do well at it or speak English well because they've traveled a lot really don't know it perfectly, but they're not highly motivated either because the program is kind of set at the mid-level or even lower than that. So anyway, it's not a great teaching situation as far as that's concerned, but it's quite challenging. First of all, it's about aviation, so I have a pilot's license from way back when, and so it's fun. I like the topics, and we do projects with them and things like that. I mean, one of your questions regards how do you use what you learn in your PLN to organize your daytime classes, I suppose, and that's a lot of that gets, well, actually, it happens to a lot of people that they find their practice changes, and that's when you know you're in a community practice, by definition. So, yeah, so the practice has changed for a long time.
Okay. Then you also do some training of EFL teachers as well.
Yeah, those are in the articles that I sent you and in the chatwing, chatwing.com/Vance.
I'll take a look at that later.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm putting that in the recording in case anybody listens and wants to know where to look for the information. Because Chatwing endures; it's there forever. So it actually forms if anything we put here. Oh, and Daniel Bassel is here, by the way. He's saying good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Good afternoon from. Yeah, he's in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're close to me. I'm in Indiana.
Okay, so anyhow, Daniel, if you have any comments, we're following the chat wing. So yeah, so you'll find above where you commented the links to the publications that I was talking about. So basically, they describe in detail how I've been training teachers. So I mentioned actually that for 2 years I was working in software development. This was after I'd been teaching English for about 20 years. I moved from Oman to California and started working for a software company making educational software, English language software. So that's when I got really involved in, well, actually the internet was just, this was in 1995. Okay, so by about 1996, I had found a place where I could teach online. And it was done mostly through email. But one of my students knew how to make web pages in Italy. He was an Italian guy. So he set up a web page for me. And that got me so interested in, I mean, I could see the HTML was definitely the way to go, you know, hyperlinking and all that. So I taught myself HTML very quickly and started setting up the spaces for the students that I was working with. And meanwhile, in '97, I moved to the UAE, back to the UAE. Actually, there's another period, 6 years, where I was a consultant on I wasn't actually teaching English at that time either. So for 8 years, from '95 to 2003, I wasn't actually teaching at all. I was just a consultant and managing the technical aspects of the language program we set up in Abu Dhabi. So Robert is here as well, Robert Walkman. He's going to be managing the next episode of Learning Together, which is next week. He's organizing it. They'll be organizing. Okay, so anyway, what happened was, but when I got back to the UAE in '97, I started connecting with students. Actually, what I was doing was sort of volunteer teaching, learning. We were using things like the Palace, which is an avatar-based space where students were coming and we were learning how to connect with them. I was learning real. I met up with other teachers. This is where they started into the teacher professional development, because we were actually 3 of us, Michael Coughlin, Maggie Doty, and myself, sort of our spaces converged in the Palace, the client we were using, and we sort of started having just one class. The students didn't care. The students came to the Palace. They didn't really know or care who their teacher was. They just wanted to be there. They were interacting. They liked that space. A lot of English took place there. I called the course that I was teaching Writing for Webheads. I taught it that. Well, there's a history of that as well, but basically they all joined I set up the pages for it, and we just all threw in on that one web space. And then one of the innovations was that some of the students who joined us were very careful about their anonymity and their identity. There was a guy, for example, from South America, from Brazil, who called himself Bahia, and he wouldn't really tell us much about himself. But as we got to know each other, as it's happened over and over again, people got a lot more, open and started sending us pictures. Once we had a couple of pictures up on the website, these are the people who you're interacting with. Others started sending them, and exponentially we got a gallery of faces up, the people who were participating with us. And a lot of those people were teachers because they were interested in what we were doing. about the turn of the century, we were able to find a voice client, a plugin to a browser plugin called Hear Me, and it was it basically ran your voice up to its servers and hosted your little plugin, which you could embed in a web page. So we could set up web pages, come here to talk, and this really caught on, and I started giving presentations about it. We started going to conferences, and at conferences we would ask students to meet us. So we go to a conference, people we didn't even know, surprisingly, would turn up on time and not disappoint us. So this happened over and over again. Eventually we got a lot of teachers in on the mix. I was asked to be a featured speaker at the Vancouver TESOL presentation, the last one they had last century there. Or no, maybe it was in 2000, 2001 or something. Anyway, so we got so many teachers involved that the students started getting suppressed, and that is, they weren't, the topics of conversation were not, they were getting more technical, and so I tried to set up a separate group for the teachers, because TESOL had just started something called Electronic Village. Are you familiar with that? Electronic Village Online. Do you go to TESOL conferences? Yeah. Okay, so there's an Electronic Village at TESOL. It's the place where the Cal IS intersection lives. So that's something that we set up. I was one of the founding members of the Cal intersection, and so in 2001 they took it online. They started something called Electronic Village Online. The idea of that was to set up, to put on training sessions for teachers, so to teach people whatever anybody wanted to volunteer to teach. And so that started in 2001, and I was asked in 2002 to come along and teach, or I should say I proposed to come and teach how I was setting up the communities with the pictures and all the the HTML files. This is Web1 stuff back then. Of course, it was all I was making it all. The students were writing whatever they would send me. I would put online. It could be something like real player voice, or so lots of multimedia. Some people were experimenting with making videos and things like that. So we put everything up that we could. I guess Robert made it into the event. Last thing he said, he was trying to connect. So Robert, if you have any problems, just let us know in chat wing and we'll sort it for you. So anyhow, so in 2002, the EVO session I set up was called Writing for Webheads. Sorry, Webheads in Action. I'm sorry, that was Webheads in Action, and or WIA. And that took off. It was just one of these things that happened at the right time. So a lot of people credit me with being its leader, but in fact, or as Seth Godin says, leaders don't have charisma, they're given charisma by the virtue of their being in the leadership position, I should say. So basically it was something that was going to happen. Any one of those people could have done something similar the very next year, as everybody was, the groundswell was pushing in that direction. But it just so happened that that I set this thing up, and then it took off, and it started. That's really where the PLN started. I suppose we had probably around 100. We might have had about 100 people in the Webheads in Action. Sorry, I'm getting in the EFL one, the Writing for Webheads. We probably had about 100 people interacting with us there. Probably with Webheads in Action, the first year we had a few dozen probably, but then that rapidly expanded. It's in the Yahoo group we set up. It's hard for us to quantify who's there because we have too many spaces. So in that particular Yahoo, it's gone over 1,000, and then we have our Google Plus communities, our Facebook pages. Every time we have a chance to make a space, we set up a space somewhere. So I guess those two in particular. There's also a LinkedIn Webheads group. So it's hard to tell exactly. There actually have been, well, there was this guy, Ali Bustangioglu, who's just done a PhD on Webheads. He actually got his PhD, he got his doctorate, and he was trying to figure out who Webheads were. Who is he supposed to be studying? So he narrowed down his field to the ones we could actually quantify. But it spreads. There are a lot of people who, for example, Learning2gether, that's really an offshoot of Webheads in action. And it's because Webheads have always met on Sundays at around this time, noon GMT. And that's noon GMT is actually in 1 hour from now. But so we always, usually when we got together in the palace I mentioned, we would just be reliably in at that space at that time. And so there was something called Tapped In. Are you familiar with Tapped In? It was a space set up by Sun Microsystems. Anyways, they had several sponsors. They made a space, a virtual space for teachers, and they had teachers all over the spectrum, K to 12, you name it. So anybody could get a room there. It was a really it's a wonderful little space because it was what do they call it, a move, a Moo environment, multi-user object through. Anyway, we could create scripts. We could make a refrigerator in your office. You could set up an office, and you could have a refrigerator script, or you could have a pet. And if people opened the refrigerator, then they were invited to take something from the refrigerator. So it was a very friendly space. There was a lot of phatic communication around that kind of thing. So it was just kind of a fun place to meet. Also, the palace I mentioned was also a very fun place to meet. You could have scripts there as well. You could you could click on things and go for rides like you can in Second Life nowadays. You could click on doors and go into other spaces. So we found lots of affordances in these virtual spaces that were just kind of fun. So in fact, I call it frivolous, unanticipated nonsense. That was my definition of fun. So instead of trying to control the environment, you just make a space where people can go and play. And it turns out that you learn a lot more like that. So it's kind of like going to play golf and actually conducting business better than you can in your office. So anyhow. So Webheads in Action was, and that regular meeting was, we used to meet at the Palace. That was actually the place where we could be counted on to be in. Sometimes the conversation would take place in the Palace. Sometimes we'd have something else set up. Often that was very spontaneously. One time, for example, we went to Second Life and we had people just took us to their favorite spaces. We teleported each other around Second Life. So stuff, unplanned things would happen, but after a while that space kind of, I wouldn't say stagnated exactly, but it became a lot more a little too predictable. People would go there. One time Michael Coughlin, one of the founders of Webheads, writing for Webheads, went there, and nobody was there, and he was so surprised, because it was a space that maybe you wouldn't go there every week. You might go once a month, but there were all these people there, and he actually went there, and there was nobody there. It might have been the summer holidays or something like that, and he's in the winter. He's in Australia, so he was expecting people to be there. But so that was, I could tell that the space was kind of starting to. It needed some interjection of something, so that's where I came up with Learning2gether. Learning2gether actually follows on 3 online conferences we put on, Webheads in Action Online Convergence. We had 3 of them in 2005, 2007, and 2009. And Kurt Bonk, by the way, was very generous in those. He would come on, and the first one had David Noonan. And they just graciously, I mean, it's all free. Nobody paid anything, or we were granted a space by Learning Times. That was our Collaborate, Blackboard Collaborate room was granted to us about that time too. So it was another space that we could use. I think Learning Times was just kind of giving spaces to educators. Like Michael Coughlin, for example, has one in his name. I had just asked for one that was called it Webheads, and we've been using it since I can't remember how long, but probably for the last 15 years. And that's so these are just spaces we had tapped in. We had Blackboard Collaborate, which used to be called Illuminate. And hi Nina, how are you? Good morning. She's in Maryland. And Robert is in the Philippines. So I think he's there. I'm not sure if he's on holiday. He was on Negros, but he lives on Manado. Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, oh yes, what was I just saying?
Oh, you were talking about Learning Together and having Kurt Bonk.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah, because those three online convergences, we called them. They're basically online conferences. They were 72-hour events. We held them for 3 days. We just put up wikis and let people sign up for them. And this was, by the way, in 2005. This was at a time when every other online conference was requesting a credit card. So we were the only one. I just figured, you know, we can do this ourselves, you know. So, and we did, and we put everything on. We actually vetted proposals for the first one. We had a vetting system set up. Somebody wrote an ASP script for that. Fernanda Rodriguez in Portugal. Mm-hmm. We are eternally grateful for that. So it's just that kind of effort that that, you know, put together these free online conferences, and Kurt he's always been a very sharing person. So at the first one, he gave 2 presentations, and as I mentioned, David Noonan also got in on the mix, and a lot of other people. Just make sure. Yes, okay. My screen just went off. Okay, so anyway, so from those conferences in 2011 came time for the next one, and I just didn't have the stamina, or I didn't want to do it myself. I was putting out little notices like, you know, anybody want to get this together? Anybody else want to do this besides me? Nobody came up with it, so that's actually where I started Learning Together. So Learning Together was a lot easier way to have these presentations, which I thought were kind of critical to keeping Webheads going. And yeah, sure enough, you know, they've been pretty successful. We're on 305 now. This, by the way, is Learning Together episode 305. Mika Mokko interview. And it's the 13th of December, 2015. It's very important when creating podcasts that you mention the date. Are you a Democracy Now! Fan?
Am I what?
You listen to democracynow.org?
No. Is it a good one?
It's a good one, and Amy Goodman is the moderator, and she never gives the date, ever. It just drives me crazy. You're listening to the news. You can, on the file you download from the website, it has the date, but when you're listening, you never know. What is this from 2 weeks ago? Is it from, you know,
10 years ago? I see. Okay. Awesome. So you also utilize Twitter in your personal learning network.
Oh yeah. Well, yes, of course. It hangs together. If you want a description, I have sort of a checklist now that I go through. So when we set up an event, as we did this one, for example, we have a wiki where Robert Walkman, who's doing this next week, is writing in the wiki. He's creating the wiki entry. If you go to learning2gether.pbworks.com and go to the page which shows the current list of events, the second entry down after ours is being prepared there by Robert Walkman. And he's doing what I envisaged that I was hoping that people would do, is that the idea is anybody wants to put on an event, just go to that wiki space and ask to join it. So if I recognize the name, or if someone tells me that they just want to create an event, I'll say fine, I'll make them a writer on that space. We've probably got 100 writers there. We've never had any problem. And so he's just writing up the event himself, and then next week it will happen, episode 306, on shaping the way we teach English, which is a MOOC that he's been involved in. And so it starts there. We have a wiki, which most of the time I'm writing it down, but basically there's a space there that people can go to. It has a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/learning2gether, that takes you to the next event coming up. That's not all that social, but it is. People can contribute, so people can write on the space. It's an open space, and yes, that's correct, Nina. tinyurl.com/learning2gether. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So that takes you right to the next event coming up, which is Mika's event today. So when we start setting up these events, I'll create an event in a Google Plus community. That's usually my next step. And if it's a Hangout, you just set up the Hangout. That creates the events. I invite other communities. I have several communities that I communicate with. For example, Webheads in Action. There's Learning2gether, and there is multiliteracies. One of my EVO sessions was multiliteracies. So that was actually where I learned by teaching, or not by teaching, but learning with other people how to manipulate some of these web spaces. So that experience taught me a lot about social media and how it works, and of course we all learn by doing. So we work through the community, Google Communities pages. I find them to be very robust. I actually discovered when I started using them that they got a lot of traction. So we were getting a lot of response through the Google Plus communities. We were getting a lot of comments on the events, which never really happens in other media. It does a little bit in Twitter. I always tweet. Well, what I do actually is I scoop past events. Well, as you notice, I sent a tweet before we started, and often we get people sending tweets. People will turn up having just received the tweet. So Elizabeth Ann has just joined us, I noticed. Hi, Elizabeth. She's one of the EVO coordinators, and she's in Grenoble in France. So, okay. So I sent a tweet when my first tweet is always when I'm in an event, and my hashtag is Learning2gether with a 2 in it. I use hashtags in everything that I post. So, for example, when I create a Google Hangout or an event, and in this case it wasn't a Hangout, but I created an event in Google Plus, and I use the hashtag Learning2gether, which then, of course, click on that, it links you in theory to other places you use that tag. And so the first tweet is as I'm getting underway. People might come there, but then once I set up the event, when Robert was asking me where do you find the link to the next event, and that tiny URL is a good place to send people, but that's a temporary space because that's kind of where you prepare the wiki. What Robert is doing right now, he can write in that space, and there's a little bit of a disjunct here because I then have to once we've had the event, I copy it over to the WordPress blog. I was using, I don't know if I was always using, I must have been using Posterous, I think, for a while, and then Posterous went under. Twitter bought it, bastards, and they destroyed it. But anyway, Postgres was really great, but for several reasons we don't need to go into. But anyway, WordPress was also great because WordPress helped everybody in Postgres clean up the mess. You could basically port your Postgres blog over into WordPress and it all went there, which was really great. So the Postgres blog became Learning2gether, WordPress.com/learning2gether, or no, sorry, it's learning2gether.net. I've actually got a domain for that one. Yeah, learning2gether.net. That takes you to the WordPress blog. So that's what happens. That's actually, it would be better probably, I've been thinking, if I set up a space in the WordPress blog and then set it up before the event. So you'd have actually a permanent link you could go to, but you'd fill it out after the event. So that's probably an idea I've had. I just haven't implemented it yet. Maybe for the next year, and one of my resolutions. But in any event, it gets ported over there. So after we set this event up, it's going to go into WordPress. It disappears from PBWorks, and the permanent archive is kept in WordPress. And of course, once I've set it up there, I scoop it. Scoop it sends connects with LinkedIn and also with Twitter. So it sends a tweet and it sends links in. And then I go back to the places where I've announced the events on Facebook and in Google Plus, and I leave comments where I've announced them, where the links are to the event, to the Learning2gether.net post that I set up. So everything is pretty linked that way. If, for example, if with your permission, I make an MP4 from this, if I record it in Camtasia, okay, good. That was an affirmative nod. So I'll make a Camtasia recording that will give me an MP4. I'll put the MP4 up at YouTube, and I'll put I'll embed the video at the WordPress blog, and then once I've done that, I also leave comments at YouTube and in the Google community spaces, link them into that put the link to the WordPress blog. So everything's linked together. It's all quite social, and that's kind of pretty much the process. I also post to Yahoo group that's where Ali Bostangioglu was assuming people who were there were webheads. So that's the one place that we sort of got 1,000 people who at one time or another have said they've signed up for us. I pointed out to him that a lot of those were probably dead links because people join but they don't disjoin, or they go somewhere else, their email address.
Right. So you also use photo sharing in your PLN, is that correct?
Photo sharing, let's see, like some people in our community are on Instagram, but I wouldn't say that it's a Flickr. I suppose we do have a Flickr tag. Actually, there are some tools you can use. One is called Tag Galaxy. We do have a lot of, a lot of people used to be into Flickr more than they are now. I still have my account. I still have a lot of photos up that are tagged Webheads in Action or Webheads. By the way, the tag Webheads is used by other people, a lot of them Spider-Man fans. If you want to associate yourself with, we can start putting on costumes. Okay, so yeah, we could dress up as Spider-Man, and then we would sort of Webheads would be a tag to use in that case, yeah. But Webheads in Action is the one that I usually use. Although it's a folksonomy, which means that you have no control over it. People do what they want to do. That's what a folksonomy is all about. So so in Flickr, or if you have a hashtag Webheads and you click on it, you're going to find some things with Webheads and some things with Spider-Man, and there's somebody else is using Webheads as well. Webheads in Action is pretty productive. takes people, pretty much you get the content that you want. We also have a famous troll who's, he was tweeting under a pseudonym of Collaborate. Now he's set up a new Twitter identity called Are You Losing Hair? And it's a really disgusting looking thing. He's also trying to, he's trolling our tags. We have an article that you can read where I'm trying to document what he's doing because he's really a nutcase. But anyway, sometimes you come upon that. So we're learning how to deal with that. You can block him from your own Twitter feed and you won't see his posts. But well, there's another space I'm using called tag. What's it called? Tag. Oh, I'm spacing on the name. But anyway, it's a Tagboard. It's called Tagboard. Tagboard.com. And Tagboard does a really nice job of the big advantage of Tagboard is that you can it goes to Flickr, to Google Plus, to Twitter. Not sure where else. I'm not sure if it gets Facebook, but anyway, it goes into spaces and will aggregate your tags and put all the so you can if you can find anything tagged web that's in action, and they also have a filter where you can filter out the undesirable, the trolls, if you have people that you don't want to appear in your Tagboard feed. But unfortunately, I wrote them about that because I found it wasn't available in the free version. So I wrote them, well, how can I get this? And they sent me back an email and said, well, how's $50 a month sound? Is that okay? Nah, not really. But apart from that, Tagboard is really nice because it spans. You know, you can you can use Twitter just to aggregate all your tags. You could, if people would just post in Twitter what they've done in other spaces, then that's a really good aggregator. And it is one where each individual can filter out anything that appears there that they don't want to see. And but each individual has to do it. And then you could also use Tagboard, but unless I write the guy back and with a sad story, who knows? Maybe they'll filter it for us. Anyway, but you can if you go to tagboard.com/ and you put in a tag, it will show you. It's a really nice aggregator for you know, for any tag that you want to use.
Awesome, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, all these are
so
integral.
I sent over the interview questions to you, and I would like to jump into that if that's okay with you, Vance.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I don't have them up anywhere, but if you'll just.
That's okay. So the first question is, how would you define a personal learning network?
Well, okay. I did come across that. I thought, oh, if I'm asked that, okay. But anyway, well, a personal learning network is your connections through social media that you develop. You find a network of people. Well, you know, actually a good definition of that is if you go back to Stephen Downes on distributed learning networks. The theory behind this is that, or George Siemens, I'm sure you're familiar with those guys. The connectivism, the idea of connectivism is that the pipes are more important than the content in the pipes. And Downes's distributed learning networks assume that and both of them, as far as Siemens writing about knowledge in a network, knowledge exists in the network, and through establishing the connections, it's available to any particular node in the network. So if I need to know something, and I think Mika might know that, I can connect with Mika, or I might not even have to directly connect. You just might appear in my Twitter feed. You might have posted something really interesting, and that connection just made me smarter. So every node in the network is as smart as all the other nodes, as any node. The sum of knowledge in the room is greater than it is in any one person's head. It doesn't matter who you are. So a personal learning network is a way of tapping into that knowledge. And you know, it works. So in theory, it makes us all smart. So if you're in a personal learning network, it's because you want to have knowledge that would be very difficult for you to get if you went and turned the pages of an encyclopedia and tried to find it.
Right. Okay.
Or even
so you kind of touched upon this. I'm sorry?
No, that's okay.
Okay. So you kind of touched upon this already, but what influenced you to create your personal learning network?
Okay. Well, that went back to the 2 years I spent in California, where I had been teaching for 20 years and teaching face-to-face, and also involved in computer-assisted language learning intersection, and I even did a newsletter for the the PC users group in the intersection. So I'm trying to communicate with people, and I was sort of editing journals. I was trying to find the obvious ways of connecting back in those days, even before we had email. So trying to put together educators. Now, by the way, saying hi to Rob, who said he's late, but that was just a few minutes ago. No problem, Rob. It's all being recorded. And Nina said that she understood that I taught for 20 years in California. No, I was teaching. I started teaching in Texas in 1976, and then I moved to Saudi Arabia after that. And then from there, I went to Hawaii and did my MA, all the time teaching English. And I went from there to Oman. I stayed there for 10 years. And it was at the end of that 20 years that I moved to California to take a job in a software development company. So I studied at University of Hawaii in Manoa. And I'm just reading Nina's questions. I'm taking Mika's questions here and Nina's questions in Chatwing. So yes, okay. So anyway, it was at that time that I was in California. The 2 years I was going cold turkey from teaching, because you really discover, as Nina is retired now, she's certainly finding out that that she misses teaching. So so one way to sort of scratch that itch is to get involved in. At the time, David Wynette was just putting on his study.com, which he's just sold the domain study.com. But anyway, that's been going all this time, where he started back at that time, late 90s, getting teachers together to connect them with students. So that's how I got started online. And of course, that's your PLN. I mentioned that one of my students, an Italian guy, set up web pages for us. A PLN is underway. It's not just email. Now it becomes hyperlinked. And then as we started connecting with students who wanted, Dave put us in touch with students who wanted to take our Palace courses, and as I met other teachers there, that's the PLN developing. So basically, it's the incentive was to the thing that made me go to the effort of doing it was being out of a teaching situation and wanting to get back into a teaching situation. And as it turned out, then I was only 2 years in California. I went to UAE at that time, but that's actually where I started all those little habits that I had set up. Also other things happened. There was a server. I was putting together a military language institute in Abu Dhabi. I was one of the consultants in a company called Amadist who was setting that up. And my department was the server. So the military set up the server, but basically I had access to it. In fact, they even complained to me. They said, we noticed there's lots of packets going out all the time to this site called thepalace.com. Oh, yes, that's me. So anyhow, so I just kind of hung out on the server, So that was actually all these possibilities come together because that was I wanted to do it. All the ingredients came together. Then in 2002, meeting the webheads in action by forming that group, through a Electronic Village Online. I mentioned also that we did. In 2005, we put on our first Webheads in Action Online Convergence. I mentioned that was the first conference that I was aware of, at least in our domain, where you didn't have to put down a credit card to join it. And in 2006, another group of teachers did essentially the same thing. They started K-12 online, which is a space you can go to K-12 conference. I think if you Google K-12 online, you'll come on it. These people are interacting with us this very day. Peggy George, for example, was one of the, she comes to our Learning Together events quite frequently, so that's where I met her in PLN terms, because those conferences actually, in fact, somebody named Jeff Utek gave an online presentation on Twitter, and the way he did it, these were synchronous presentations, so the way he did it was he went onto Twitter and he said he just sent out a tweet, and he was just doing this presentation for the conference, but oh, here's someone who's answered my tweet. Oh, okay, oh, well, let me talk to this guy. And so just by that demonstration, I realized I had it, the power of Twitter. Nobody understood Twitter back then, you know, unless you were there. And that was just such a clear demonstration. That's where I started using Twitter. So the PLN sucked me into all these things, and of course keeps adding on to itself as you pursue these social affordances, you know. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what motivates you to maintain your personal learning network?
The people who are in Chatwing right now, for example, everybody, I mean, there's so much positive vibrations from it. It's, yeah, everyone. Well, I'm very much involved in Electronic Village Online. I've been, as I mentioned, my first session was in 2002, Webheads in Action, but in 2003 I became a coordinator of Electronic Village Online. I've been a coordinator ever since, and this is also a group of people in the PLN who are working with one another, and the sum is definitely much greater than the parts, because it's just a fantastic movement. It you know, it's put every year we're in our 16th year now. I think we're just coming on to year 16. So 16 years, you're bringing other people into the PLN. People are constantly, you know, actually, I'm thinking Clay Shirky's book, Cognitive Surplus, explains why why people get into PLNs, because they're not benefiting financially, but they're benefiting because they like to do well. They like the feedback, the acknowledgement from other people that they're doing well. So you feel like you're contributing, and you are contributing. Everybody is contributing, not just you, but everybody, and you're all helping each other. You're finding new people who are wanting to put on sessions in Electronic Village Online, so you help them, or you meet participants there who, you know, some of these participants actually eat the Kool-Aid. You know, some of them come along, they don't, you know, they're there, but some of them see what you're doing and how you're interacting, and this is a revelation for them, kind of like Jeff Utek's talk for me was. You know, I had the Kool-Aid at that point, you know. So you get a lot of people, the PLN just exponentially multiplies. And yeah, so it's its own intrinsic motivation to work together to do things that have positive benefit.
Absolutely. So how has your personal learning network enhanced your professional development?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier something. I'll tell you. One of our Webheads in Action online convergences, we had Etienne Wenger, one of our people in our PLN. Her name was Susan Nyrop. She was interacting with Etienne in CP squared, I think. We were also intersecting with that community of practice. But one of the people who was with us at the time was doing a PhD on Webheads, one of the first ones, maybe even the second one. His name was Chris Johnson. Yeah, Chris was actually I met him in Seattle. He took me skiing. So that was a one-way personal learning networks. I wouldn't have been able to get up there had Chris not provided the wheels to take me up to the night skiing up above Seattle. Anyway, so he did this. He did his dissertation with Etienne Wenger as his supervisor or one of his on his committee, and you're familiar with Etienne Wenger, of course. Communities of practice. Yeah. Okay. So he's quite well known, quite famous. So we had another lady in our PLN when Chris or when Susan and Chris and Etienne met us at the WebEds in Action Online Convergence, 2009, I guess. Someone else was there. Her name was Christina Costa. Anyway, so Christina and Etienne were talking, and Etienne asked her, how did you know you were in a community of practice? And she said, when my practice changed. It popped right off. And by the way, because I'm in Christina's Twitter feed, I actually ended up in one of her classes. She does her classes. She does lectures I guess in YouTube. She goes onto YouTube and gives her lecture. Her students interact in Twitter. She has a hashtag for her class. Her students all turn up, and she announced it on Twitter. And hi to Glennis. Glennis has just arrived. Glennis Hansen. Okay, and anyway, she was interacting with her students, and all the, like, for example, she had them do projects, and so they posted their projects on the Twitter tag. So yeah, so anyway, so you can go there and you can see all the students' projects and everything. So anyhow, so she told Etienne that she knew she was in a community of practice when her practice changed, and that comes to your question: is how do you know, or what impact has your community of practice or your PLN had on your practice? So there you are. I guess for me, it's that first of all, I'm quite open, which is unusual. Like, for example, I create wiki spaces. I put everything I do up in wiki spaces, even the classes I teach. And one time, one of my colleagues said, "Vance, I remember seeing in your pages, that there was something, you had some instructions on configuring Audacity. Do you know where those are? Because if you're in the Blackboard world, you can't find anything. Sometimes it just disappears. So if you're in a closed space, I said, well, why don't you just Google it? Okay, so she did. Boop, pops right up. Everything she wanted to know, it's just right there. So so working in open spaces is sometimes anathema to the way people think in places that you're likely to work, where they have a more proprietary, everything is kind of proprietary. Like all the things, they're really interesting tools in the Blackboard environment, but you never know if whenever I see the tools, I think, well, yeah, I could probably do this in an open space, something very similar. That's not really correct, because actually their tools are quite familiar, but then you have the other side of the coin is when I leave some of the tools are quite superior, that's what I meant to say. But when you leave that space, then you might not have access to them. So, here again, if you want to keep a portfolio, you need to be open. So I suppose openness is one thing that I tend to, and I keep things that I do for my students are pretty open, so that anybody can find them, and they're also searchable. If they're open, they're searchable on Google, so you can pull these things up. So as far as keeping web pages, keeping hyperlinked spaces for students, I find actually in practice that in our environment, Blackboard doesn't always open for them. So in my space, I keep a link that actually will send you into Blackboard, but you don't have to go through Blackboard's front page, which doesn't open to bandwidth, but you can reach the direct link you're looking for. So that kind of thing, just it doesn't really matter. Or if you're in Blackboard, you can put links to outside spaces, which is also another thing I do. So this kind of thinking is a little. Oh, Glennis is saying that she's having trouble with the Adobe connection. The recording's okay, I presume, Mika. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Okay, so we're like, and it's all being recorded, Glennis, so you can pick it up later. It'll be on learning2gether.net eventually. Yeah. Okay. So so that's just one example. I suppose you also try to get students to create their own artifacts and put them online. Like, for example, I teach pilots at the moment, so we can have them make recordings as if take the parts of air traffic controllers and pilots and then put that stuff online. So, but that's pretty common with apps. Apps kind of work that way. So if you're in an iPad environment, I would. But it's something that's second nature to me, and yeah. So yeah, I'd say there are a lot of ways. I don't know. Is that enough for an answer right now, or do you want me to elaborate further?
Oh no.
Okay.
So let's see. Have you learned what new learning has been reached from participation in your personal learning network? Has it just really been utilizing these tools, or has it been other things as well?
That's a good question, and the answer is so extensive that it's in those articles that I sent you. There's a bit of documentation about some of the things we've learned. But all the people that are in the Chatwing space right now are all part of my learning network, or our learning network. We're all part of each other's, and I'm sure any of these could give you examples of things that they've learned. Like, for example, Elizabeth Ann is constantly finding out things about Google Plus and making little videos. She makes some very good training videos, and she posts them to our Google Plus communities. So, interesting little tidbits. Another thing, we're having a lot of trouble with Blackboard Collaborate nowadays since they went over to, there's been some issues with Java, with Google, with Chrome. Chrome is kind of, apparently it's still working for some people, but there's actually on the Java and Chrome blogs, they're both talking about how they're probably not indefinitely going to support Java. So it's actually the Java applets. There's a distinction. It depends on which kind of Java you're using or what the purpose of the Java is. But anyway, you can read the details on their blogs. But in any event, so one thing that since we're using this space, Blackboard Collaborate space, we're really trying to come to grips with that. And so all the information that we pool on this topic gets, we document it, we learn from each other. Nina, for example, in the chat she is unable to get into Blackboard Collaborate, though we've spent time with her, and it's definitely something that's in her Windows 10, or we're not really sure what it is. We tried everything, and anyhow, but it's that being able to get an answer when you need it. Being able to tap into the knowledge in the network. That's one thing, and then another illustration of this is something called Becoming a Webhead, which is, as I mentioned, I did the original Webheads in Action EVO session in 2002. I think we did it again in 2003, but my interests were starting to get into communities of practice. So that 2003 session was more about communities of practice. It, in a way, left its, I was developing my thinking, and now it's gone into connectivism, and now we're into Minecraft, and I went through period where I was into multiliteracies. So my own interests have gone on beyond the original Webheads in Action, but some people who were participants in that, Daphne Gonzalez and Teresa Almeida Desa. I always mispronounce her name. Anyway, Teresa Almeida Desa. So, yes, thank you. Nina is coaching me there. So these people thought that that was a lack. That original Webheads spirit that had brought people into this community practice to begin with, it should be preserved. So they put on something called becoming a Webhead. So here's the PLN acting to make sure that that people are to sort of set up an apprentice program, which is also one of Wenger's communities of practices. Basically, apprenticeship is going on. So so the PLN was making up for that that lack of the need, and making sure that new people would get the parts of the program that I had just gone on and just through my own interest taken elsewhere. So you know, they did that for 15 years. You know, they only recently started doing it. And there's another EBO session though called IT for Learning, IT for ELT, or someone can remind me of the exact. But anyway, ICT for ELT. Thank you, Nina. Well done. And they did that for 10 years. She's corrected me also. It wasn't 15 years. They did becoming a webhead for 10 years, but that's a long time. Mm-hmm. And ICT for ELT now is pretty much the same people who are just, they're doing essentially the same formula, you know, bringing people into the tools, teaching them about the basic tools and about the basic connectivity, how they connect with each other, how they form PLNs. And Nina says in the text chat that she actually became part of our PLN by taking one of the Becoming a Webhead courses. So Nina is also a good example of someone who's learned quite a lot from this PLN experience. She was, for the last 2 years, the lead coordinator for Electronic Village Online. She did an excellent job. And so she went from being a newbie, as we all did many years ago, and really at the peak. And she knows how to solve problems utilizing her PLN, even if she becomes frustrated sometimes with those problems, as we all do. Okay, so anyway, there's some examples.
Okay. Nice. So what new collaborative networks or connections have been established as a result of participating in your personal learning network?
Well, I mentioned several, I suppose, like becoming a webhead, and
okay.
But well, at the moment, our latest thing is Minecraft.
Minecraft.
I've been quite, that's the latest Kool-Aid I've been sipping at, and sort of it comes from learning from the PLN, from my PLN, about gamification, and then of course, and listening to podcasts. I listen to a lot of educational podcasts. These people are part of my PLN. So a lot of the podcasts that have really made me sit up and think, this is interesting, or about Minecraft. So it got me very interested in it, but I had a problem with Minecraft. The problem was that I'm not the kind of person that high school teachers are going to let into their students' PLNs, you know, so, you know, no telling who I am, you know, old guy. So I had a problem in learning. I mean, I could get Minecraft and I could play it on my iPad, or, you know, on my, there's limited benefit here. I suppose I could also put it into survival mode and really make a game out of it. But what I lacked were two things. I lacked a community where I could go and do this. And of course, you need, Minecraft is a very complicated game, and complex even, and you need people to, you need some explanation of, you'll progress more if you language learning is like this too. Obviously, if you can learn a language in isolation if you want, or you can go to a country, or you can get online and you can find people who will help you to learn the language. That's can be a more effective way to learn. So Minecraft was an example of this. Now, since I'm not an expert, I did, however, know how to activate a PLN. So I just created an Electronic Village online session, and I attracted experts. And after we did this, we're in our second year now. But the first year, sure enough, I learned how to, destroy trees, and they replenish automatically, so doesn't hurt the climate. But anyway, I learned quite a lot about and learned how much fun it was. But what I really learned, more than just Minecraft, I learned about the benefit of, well, I'd already learned that something like, for example, if you go to Second Life, what are you doing in Second Life? You're dressing up as a lot of people pay a lot of attention to their hair, and you have to go to the right boutiques, and you have to get the right clothes, and that's not really, that's not a waste of time. That's interacting in the environment. While that's like going to play golf and doing business, So basically, they're in Second Life, they're playing golf, or whatever you do in Second Life, but you're learning from each other all the time. It's just basically a space where you go to learn. Now, Minecraft is pretty much similar to that, because what we do is we go to Minecraft and we go on a VoIP tool and we talk to each other. So we're learning from each other. And more important, what I really learned that I didn't know before was that the power of collaboration. Minecraft can be very daunting because you're going to get killed, when you first go there. Zombies will come and get you, and you go on YouTube and you figure out how you can protect yourself. You just need to build some kind of shelter and get through the night, and then but so all of a sudden the experts who were populating our place, the guy Jeff Kuhn is the guy who was saving everybody. He started building these shelters and put signs on them and said, "Come here for the night." And so you sort of, because you've got a friend there, all of a sudden you never die. You can go to the shelter, and then when you're in the shelter with Jeff, then he'll show you, well, here, let's dig here, and we're looking for, here, we're going to dig down here, and we're going to look for this kind of particular stuff that we can use to, and he showed me how to make a chest and how to set up the crafting table, of course, and how to put stuff in the chest in case I did die, I'd come back and find that spot, And he was modeling interesting techniques. For example, he created this huge beacon that lit up at night, so if you got lost, you could follow the beacon. That even if you died and you respawned in that space, the beacon would still be there. So you respawn near where you die. So then I could go into the shelter and I could get my chest, and I'd have a bunch of things, so you didn't really lose everything one game to the next. So this kind of stuff is really interesting, and now that has a definite benefit for your teaching, because you take that into class. If that's something that your students are into, or if you need a space where learning can take place for your students, it's not that you're wasting time in Minecraft, just like Linden Hair or whatever. Whatever little details that keeps people there and intrigues them and makes them think, oh, this is a fun, interesting space. You go into a classroom, the chairs are all lined up in a row, and you sit there and you wait till the teacher calls on you. That's a space. I don't know. It's a place. Learning takes place there. Well, okay, so set up a world where people can go and learn. That's the whole point. It's not like Minecraft is what you're learning. You're just doing that. But you're also learning as you go. If you're trying to learn math or geometry or history or language. Well, another of our experts is the son of one of my co-moderators, and actually she kind of got me into this. Her name is Mariana Smolchitz. I can't pronounce that name. And her son is named Philip, and Philip was 11 years old when we started interacting with him, but he was an expert in Minecraft. He was also an expert in English language. He gained this expertise. Yeah, he gained this expertise because through Minecraft, because he speaks Croatian as a native speaker, but you can't do much in Minecraft as a Croatian speaker, so you're meeting German speakers or whatever, and they're all interacting in English. And they made videos, they're constantly setting up their spaces. So as a language learning space, and he's only one of people. Actually, we wrote an article. Mariana interviewed Philip for the article, and she tried to document how he was learning English, how his English had developed. And I helped with the article. I wrote an introduction where I found I did a literature review basically, and I found other teachers who were having similar experiences. And when we did Minecraft last year, we got two of those teachers, David Dodgson and Jeff Kuhn, to join us. They had both written articles about Minecraft, and that's how we met them. And Jeff became a great collaborator. And so, all the PLN is just developing through this concrete example. Evidence is everywhere. We have a Webheads in Action Yahoo group, which has thousands of messages. I don't know how many. Anyway, it's all open, just like everything else. So you can go to this Yahoo group, and the messages. It's an open group. You don't have to be a member to read the messages. So you can find evidence. Posts are made there. The posts are tapering off quite a bit now, but there's quite a lot of evidence documenting learning that's taken place. I suppose that would be a good PhD topic, to go in and examine those, some of those messages, find all the examples, answer the questions that you're asking right now. There's a lot of evidence in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you describe the support or feedback that you've either given or received from your personal learning network?
Well, it's constant. It's built. It's in the woodwork. It's here again, you could actually find a paper trail or a silicon trail in any event in those messages that I just mentioned, because people are constantly documenting through the interactions that have been preserved there. They're learning and feeding back to one another. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, one of the points is made that it's not all on professional topics. It could be someone's mother is having problems right now, or there could be a death somewhere, or someone's just gotten married, or it's not necessarily, it's all kinds of topics. Okay, Daniel. Good. Daniel's leaving. Okay. Thanks. And it'll be recorded. We'll have it all online. Mm-hmm. So Daniel, by the way, is an example. He runs something called Tutor Mentor, and he tutors inner city kids in Chicago, and apparently this is a lifetime work for him. Okay, Robert is leaving as well. Okay, nice that you came by, Robert. So Daniel became interested in us because he's trying to find ways to he needs money basically because his stuff is on a higher scale. I mean, no, but it's for charity, a charitable cause. So he's trying to find ways that he can maximize what he's doing to make real impact on society, on kids in Chicago. And he's been doing this quite a while. If you follow some of the things he's been posting, you can see the pictures from when he was a young man, and it's an interest he's had for quite a while, and it's really interesting talking to him and finding the intersections between what we do and how he's really, what we're doing in our spaces, we're reaching people, we're helping other educators, but he's actually reaching people who are economically deprived, and so it's quite interesting to see where what we do could help him and vice versa. So here again, this is more stuff that we're learning through feedback to one another. We find lots of intersections. Another simple one is in Minecraft. I mentioned Philip has YouTube channels where he records what he does in Minecraft. There's also another EVO session that works in Second Life and does machinima. And one of the people in that session named Carol Rainbow met us a lot in Second Life, in Minecraft. And we realized that there were intersections between machinima and the recording YouTube channels on Minecraft that basically have some very similar goals. And on an educational level, that goal is to help people promote language-based activities, task-based activities, I guess you could say, through creating content. And it's either the content will be what you've recorded in Minecraft, or it could be something that in Second Life people generally create sort of stage plays to make their machinimas and produce some really interesting results. And if your idea is to learn oh, by the way, a lot of the things that they do in the village session is not necessarily in English. It could be in any language. So there's a really good one in Italian where this couple is sitting there talking to each other, and and the lady orders this. What would you like in Italian? And you can, even if you don't know Italian so well, you can still follow the conversation. And she orders this, that, and the other. And he says, "Oh, I'll have a glass of water." And at the end of it, he gets this big bill, and it's quite cute, but excellent thing to use in an Italian language class.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bouncing ideas off each other all the time.
So what are some difficulties I'm sorry?
Yeah. I was just saying we're feeding back to one another and percolating ideas all the time. So eventually you come out with really strong.
So what are some difficulties or shortcomings you have faced utilizing a personal learning network?
Oh, I mentioned the troll. His name is O'Reilly, and he's been a real nuisance. So that's really he's almost the only downside, but his case is very interesting. If you really want to read about it, you could. I've got a blog post called the only known detractor of EVO, because he's hitting on what he does is he tries to spam people's hashtags, and he's got a whole list of hashtags. He's got about 20 or 30 hashtags of people that he feels have slighted him, and he even threatened to sue me if I didn't take down that blog post. I just added to it. So the thing that he's claiming that we have no basis, we have no proof, because he'll put things up, but then he'll remove that stuff. But the stuff that's online, when he puts something up, for example, he started a Facebook page. He called it the New Webheads, and it was a very dark space at one time. I got screenshots of it. He was kind of showing his behaviors. You could just tell by the way he's posting. It's just kind of, it's interesting. Some of the stuff he does is interesting, but it's mostly just there to cloud what you're trying to do, and that's why he's not really welcome in people's EVO sessions. And then once you kick him out, then he shows his real dark side. The reason that you realized he was dangerous to begin with suddenly comes out, and so he set up this fake webheads space, and he attracted some people there. Like, for example, George Stevens and Stephen Downs are both members of his space. I don't think they ever interact there, but if you go to that space, I'm a member of that space. The reason I'm a member is that I want to keep an eye on what's going on there. So it's all, and I find it very interesting and fascinating. But really the most interesting thing is that he changed it. First of all, he deleted all of his posts and left in only the posts of legitimate webheads, which once all his stuff is removed, it actually looks like a regular space. And he changed the letterhead. He changed the top, but in his description of the space, he's harping on his old, the things he's always, like for example, we don't meet ISO standard 9001 or something like that. And so because some of there's European funding associated, I should say, with some of the EVO groups. It has nothing to do with European funding. In fact, and he got onto us because in webheads because he thought that webheads had something managed EVO, and this is what he wanted us to do something about. So, but basically, because I have the screenshots of what it used to look like, I have the proof. So I just put everything online, and you can. So he's stopped bothering me about suing me because the proof is there. I don't know how we've got it, and also I'm trying to put it in a space where anybody can see it, and I would encourage others to do the same, except that if you call attention to yourself, you'll get hit. So you can't really, only me, I'm already hit, so I don't, you just have to deal with it. It's a multiple literacies issue. The post was made when I was doing multiple literacies, but it's also an issue in EVO because, he's got this new avatar, which I guess there's really no proof that Are You Losing Hair is him. However, it's quite obvious if you read the things that he's posting, the nonsense he's posting, and the hashtags he's hitting. So here again, I make some screenshots and make sure I have evidence and put it up at that blog post so people can see it. Anyway, you have to try not to be bothered too much by that. And also, you don't want to spend too much time. You could actually get sucked into this vortex, of trying to battle him. And he spends a lot of time, or he has robots programmed to spend a lot of our time. So, so that's kind of a downside. I spoke with Stephen Downs one time at one of our events because when we did a project, one of our projects was called Writing Matrix, and Writing Matrix was where I got some people teaching writing in different parts of the world, and we used Technorati, which, should I turn off my webcam? Maybe I'll turn off my webcam because I'm detecting a little bit of lag here on the webcam.
Okay.
Let me just switch it off for a moment. Yeah, I'll switch it off so in case it's not, see, it's lagging. It's not, oh, there it is. Okay, it went off. Okay, so this might help the audio a little bit. I noticed other parts of my computer are starting to wear. So basically, Writing Matrix was where we got a lot of, and this was, we were trying to explore, well, we had a tool called Technorati. Are you familiar with Technorati?
Yes.
Technorati is kind of, yes, it's a website which is looking for, it's corporate in its intent. It's trying to make money, but it will also aggregate blog posts on any given tag. So at the time when it was more workable just for anybody, we had people writing in different countries blog posts and posting blogs, and in the blog posts they would use the tag Writing Matrix. And it worked really well at that time because, first of all, Technorati allowed it to be aggravated like that. I also noticed my microphone is going on and off.
Oh,
anyway,
maybe I should turn my,
okay.
Let's see if this works. Is that better?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, if it stays, yes, it's staying on. I was talking, and as I'm talking, the microphone keeps going on and off, but it's holding a lot steadier now. Okay, so anyway, basically, the way it worked was anybody in any country, in fact, other people, when they learned about our project, they had their students create blog posts and tag them Writing Matrix, and people in other countries could find them. So you had this Writing Matrix PLN of people, students, language students in all different parts of the world who were basically doing collaborative projects, but without the teachers having to set it up in advance. So it worked. I spoke to, eventually Technorati stopped functioning like that. Mm-hmm. So Stephen Downs, meanwhile, has what he calls GRSS hopper. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with GRSS hopper?
No.
When they set up their MOOCs, Stephen Downs has a script called GRSS hopper, which will go out and find tags. Let's say he wants to do a MOOC on connectivism. They'll make a tag, and then the only difference between the way Technorati worked and the way his script works is that with his script you have to register it. So I had a chance to speak to him about this one time, and he said, well, yeah, if you used a tag like writing matrix and you did it the way we did it, you'd be spammed immediately. And so by having people register so that his script will find only registered users, he avoids the problem of spam, which is very clever. So it's kind of like saying that we were just lucky because we had a tag that no one was spamming, and we checked it very carefully before we used it to make sure that no one else was using it. So writing matrix was a unique tag at the time. So I think actually what we need is spam, trolls and spam. Those are two things that mitigate against your PLN. And so what we need is something that will do what Technorati used to do. And as I mentioned with Tagboard, for example, something that can be filtered. So it would do something like what Stephen Downs has in Grasshopper, except that you wouldn't have to register for it. It would just go out and get the posts, but somehow filter where I guess you could whitelist it maybe, blacklist and whitelist it. So something free, something that anybody could use, unlike Tagboard where you have to pay $50 a month if you want to filter it. So that's the kind of thing that we're moving towards. We can see tools that are doing what we want them to do, but imperfectly. So this is kind of developing through feedback in your PLN to sort of do something about the downsides, two of which I just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you have any advice that you would like to give L2 teachers to support participation in the personal learning network?
Well, yeah, Twitter is a good start.
Okay.
You can go to blog posts and you can find Twitter feeds of other educators. Listen to podcasts. I found that by listening to podcasts regularly, I found other people whom I wanted to be in my PLN. This last summer I went to ISTE in Philadelphia. Are you familiar with the ISTE conference?
ST?
ISTE.
Oh, ISTE, yes.
I can't remember. ISTE, yeah. So I went to the one in Philadelphia. I had known about it for some time. I had never been to one of their conferences, but lots of people there I knew from my PLN. And so I would meet them. And, oh, wow, my hero, you've been in my PLN. You're a hero in my PLN, and maybe even some of them even knew me. I met Wesley Fryer, for example, and shook his hand, and he said, you do good work, which I would say the same for him. And he was standing next to Kevin Honeycutt, somebody else in my PLN, who introduced himself. And I said, well, yeah, I know who you are, and but I don't think he knew who I was. But in any event, other people, a lot of people who I met podcasting, and a good productive space for me was, I'm not sure if it's as productive nowadays. I guess podcasts, educational podcasts, World Bridges, Jeff LeBeau's World Bridges Network, EdTech Talk is maybe the one that's most relevant to what we do. Dave Cormier is the putative head of that. I think they sort of, that's an edtechtalk.com, I believe, and not that it charges any money, but all the different channels, or part of the rhizome, you might say, if you use Dave Cormier speak. WorldBridges is kind of a rhizomatic instantiation of a whole bunch of PLNs coming together. Like Dave is most active with Korea Bridges now, because he's teaching English in Korea. So he has his students, he holds Hangouts with them, makes some endearing programs. They show each other how to prepare food, all kinds of, it's just remarkable what he does. But Korea Bridges is actually part of his network that makes money. So it supports all the other Bridges programs. But Webcast Academy was one of his projects at a time when it was really hard to do webcasting. He had a whole bunch of people who wrote ebooks on webcasting, teaching each other how to do it, webcasting for one another, and eventually you graduated from the Webcast Academy and you had a skill. And now you can pretty much do that in Hangout. I learned pretty much what I know about Hangouts from Jeff. He explains, if I need to do something, he explains it to me, and so then I become an expert, and now Nina is becoming an expert as well. I'm not sure what's happening in Chatwing. I can't actually see Chatwing right now. It sort of went, I'm going to just put a few F's in here and see. More messages. Anyway, okay. Yeah, my Chatwing sort of disappeared at one point. Back when we had videos on and funny things were happening on my computer. So Chatwing kind of disappeared for me. Anyway, okay. So, more questions?
Is there anything else I should know about, your personal learning network or how you utilize your personal learning network?
Well, you could become a part of it, and then we would tell you on a just-in-time, as-needed basis, So you can, and a lot of what you might want to know as background, I put in those 2 links that I gave you at the very beginning on
There's
small.
There's actually only one link. The only link that we have is the one to the Google Docs document.
There's one before that. It's Stevens.
It's not showing up.
It should be way up. Okay. I can't get it here, but I will. Oh, I've just hit a refresh. Oh, it's come back. Okay. Let me just see where it is. If you move the cursor up, you might be able to.
It says,
anyway.
The first one is, you're welcome to eavesdrop on the interview.
Yes.
And then
after that?
After that says, another one, draft submitted to TESOL publication pending acceptance.
So you didn't get the one before another one. Okay. Let me just find it and I'll put it here. Okay. Here's the. Yeah. This is on small social media assisted language learning. This is one of my. This is what I think CAL has become, social media assisted language learning.
Okay.
So I've got that link here somewhere. Let's see. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. Let's copy that and paste it in the chat link. Yeah. Make sure it goes. It did go in. That was probably at the time. Yes, you know something? I told you, remember that something had stayed in the. Yeah, when I wrote, this is another one, I replaced. It went, in my view, it went up. It was posted in my view, but it was also stayed in the text chat. So this is the other one. It's it's in a. It's a chapter in a book, and I just put the draft. I wouldn't, of course, put an actual chapter that now. I mean, this is like maybe a few years from now. But right now it's a draft. So the draft that I submitted to that chapter is there. They may have changed it. I don't know. But anyway, people can read the draft.
Great.
So there it is. That explains how those learning networks, how the personal learning networks go together, how the convergences, the learning together, webheads, how it explains how they all go together. The encyclopedia, the TESOL encyclopedia article is really about webheads, so it's trying to define webheads. So it's actually, a lot of it covers the same ground, but it's focused on webheads. But the small article is basically, well, it says connectivist learning, reaching students through teacher professional development. And that's what I just explained in the last hour and a half.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, that's all the questions I have for you today. But I was hoping that if I have any additional questions, that I could, ask some follow-up questions for you if you're available.
Of course, yes. And if you wanted, you could join the networks. So if you go to webheads.info, you'll find lots of little.
Webheads.info.
Let me just put that in. Yeah. This is a Web1 page which I set up that links to a lot of our spaces. So you can find out how to join our Yahoo group list. So that's just that's a billboard space where it links to a lot of the things we talked about today.
Okay, so, great, thank you. I'll most likely join, for sure, absolutely.
Well, the other people I mentioned, like Chris Johnson, for example, was a member of our PLN, interacted with us quite a lot for some time. Ali Bastangioglu became quite enamored with webheads, and he's quite grateful, and he's also he likes the group, so he's still with us, and other people also who've done some work with on our group. It's often studied, our group. I should probably put together a compilation of links to articles and dissertations and things like that, and we'll add yours, of course. So you keep in touch and let us know what you're finding out. And also, when you've got something before 2017, when you're going to graduate, if you want to practice your committee meeting, your final meeting, you can try it out at Learning Together. You can explain to us your research, and we'd be very interested to hear about it.
Yeah, that'd be really
great. Rob, you might want to put a link. You see in the chat wing, he just put. Rob Howard has been doing his EFL magazine has been putting on EFL Talks, EFLtalks.com. Yeah, so he's putting on a lot of the last one, the one he did just recently, was with people who are starting to monetize what they're doing online, teaching students online, starting up language schools. Rob, by the way, has a language school, an online language school. He's living very comfortably, I hope, in South America, in Bahia, in Brazil. And anyway, so these guys his PLN is trying to explain to people like us in Learning Together how you take it to the next level. If you really want to do what you're doing as to make a living at it, this is how you do it. If you want to move to South America, take off your shoes and occasionally wear sandals and teach people, drink a lot of caipirinhas and teach online during your sober moments. I guess that's what Rob does. I'm not really sure. I hope I didn't just slander him badly. I'm sure he's actually, we're learning a lot from him.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day today on your vacation.
Well, this is, I won't be back for another week when I hear from Robert Walkman on shaping the way we teach English. That's about this time next Sunday. That's what we'll be doing from from 1400 GMT. If you want to find out more about that, go to bbworks.com/learning2gether, and you'll find more. Rob says he's laughing. Must have been something I said.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, thank you. So if I have any further questions, I'll send them your way.
Sure, no problem. Join us. Come hang out with us.
Yes. I'll be traveling from the 23rd all the way to the 4th, so anytime that I'll be available. Yeah,
we'll pop in and see what's going on with Learning2gether, and we welcome you. Everything's recorded, so you can find everything. There's an index. It's in the sidebar at pbworks.com/learning2gether. There's an index that lists in one page, all the 300 talks with their links, the recorded links. So that's actually the most convenient space. If I need to find something, I go to that page and I search Control F, and I find if I want to find Kurt Bonk's presentations for Learning2gether, for example, I go there, I type in Kurt Bonk at the top, and it takes me to all the times he's come and shared with us.
Okay, great, fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay,
nice
bye-bye.
to talk to you.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.